Welcome to the On the Rise podcast, where we talk about time freedom, passive investing through real estate, finance, mindset, and how to integrate your faith into your work. Let's dive in. Quick disclaimer as always, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. Welcome to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. I'm here today with a very special guest, the founder and CEO of Rise48. Welcome to the show, Zach.
No, thanks so much, Nick. We're looking forward to it. You are a valued member of our team, and I'm excited to be on your show.
Yeah.
Be awesome.
You know, why I wanted to start this show is because I think there's a lot of people that are successful, a lot of leaders that are excelling in their work. I mean, I think you've been able to build something really special here with Rise48. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into who Zach is and maybe share some of the story that hasn't been captured in other podcasts. And really, this podcast is, how do you incorporate your faith into your work? I think a lot of people think about their work as one part of their life, and maybe church is Sundays or maybe Wednesday nights. So I'd love to jump in that with you, but tell us a little bit about how you started this company, the quick few-minute version, and then let's really get into who you are.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, absolutely. So, quick background. Just born and raised in lower middle class family here in Phoenix. Got a journalism degree, didn't want to do that. Went into healthcare marketing, I needed to make money, had a bunch of debt, got burnt out. And I just wanted something more. I just felt like there was more to life than like working in a job, and I needed like fulfillment. Quit my job in beginning of 2018, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought I was going to like flip houses. I thought I wanted to do something in real estate, but I didn't know anybody. I had about $300K that I had relentlessly saved for the previous 5 years or so, like following the Dave Ramsey plan. I had a good sales job. I just saved it. And I just was like learning about real estate through podcasts, books, etc., and decided, hey, I want to raise money and buy apartment buildings, right? And so, that was it was tough. It was a ton of adversity because I went from having this job where I'm making $200K a year plus and knowing what I have to do to achieve success to waking up in the morning and not knowing, what do I do today? I felt like a loser. I lost my identity. You know what I mean? And then I realized, like, maybe that's not good. Like my identity shouldn't have been tied to an occupation or a job. And I learned a lot about myself going through that adversity where your savings are dwindling. You go to like networking events or like a family event and people say, oh, what do you do? You say, oh, I'm a real estate investor, but I don't actually own any real estate and I don't do anything except research. So it was tough. We can kind of get into how my faith honestly helped me sculpt me during that time. But yeah, basically started the company in beginning of 2018, and it would be a few years before we made any money.
I think for a lot of people, the risk of doing something on their own, I mean, you're making really good money. I think you were even president or part owner of this company.
Yeah.
And you stepped away from that without necessarily a next step. And I think it was several months maybe before even landing that first deal. I think I've read some stories about, calling 90 mobile home parks and trying to make something happen. In that season, how did you cope with not knowing the future?
It was really tough. And yeah, I had golden handcuffs at my other job, right? I was like I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not challenged, but I'm making such good money, I should be grateful. I'm making more money than all my friends. I'm like making $200K in my early to mid 20s, but it just wasn't enough. And so I had to take that leap, and that was really scary. And you go through like the fear, and then when you're trying to do new things, that's where that fear really creeps in and all that doubt. And I have to give a lot of credit to my then girlfriend, now wife, Grace, because I grew up as a Christian, but I remember in my like younger years, up till I was like 7 or 8, we would go to church, but then we didn't really go to church. Like my parents, so it wasn't really a big part of my life, to be honest. I always identified as a Christian, but I wasn't really practicing it. I wasn't praying. I wasn't talking to God. I wasn't going to church. And when I met Grace around the same time in 2017, right before I would quit and start the company, she really got me back into my faith and made me realize the importance of it. And it sounds bad, but I think a lot of it is human nature. And I find myself doing it now, even today, is that, when we as humans are facing adversity and these worldly challenges, that's when we go to God and we feel like we need Him and we need to talk to Him, right? And that shouldn't be how it is, but it is human nature to do that, right? And so like I was going through this adversity of like burning through savings, not making any money, not knowing how to get into this really intimidating industry where I don't know anybody, big buildings, big dollar signs. I'm cold calling people. They're telling me you can't do it. People think they don't take me seriously, and it really destroys your confidence. So most people at that point would quit and go back to the job, right? But I had to really dig deep, and there were some days where I mentally and emotionally did quit. But that's when I would talk to God, and at one point I just said, God, I have to surrender to you. Like, just take this burden off of me. Whatever is supposed to happen will happen, and don't put all this pressure on me. And I do that almost every morning now, which we can get into later if we want to fast forward to where we're at now. But the adversity of trying to start the business really brought me closer to God, and I think was one of the reasons I was able to keep going.
Yeah, and I think your spouse really shapes who you are. I know for me with Katie, like it's your better half in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And if you have someone else pulling you and pushing you at the same time, that can really shape you. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. You're now a husband, a father of 2 boys.
Yep.
Ambitions to continue to fill the quiver. How does your faith influence how you lead at home with your wife and with your children?
Yeah, great question, Nick. Yeah, so we've been married for about 6 years now. We have a 2-year-old boy and a 6-month-old boy. So there's a lot of action. I mean, you're ahead of me with like 4 kids, right, Nick? So you know how it goes. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, when you're leading a company, there's a lot of constraints on your time and your emotions, and it's stressful. And so I have to constantly, focus, okay, when I get home, I need to try to shut it off and be present and be the dad and be the husband, because the reality is I probably have an hour and a half at night that I can spend with them before I have to go to bed and wake up in the morning. And that's, during the weekdays, that's what I get, is like an hour and a half with them. And then I try to really use the weekends to be present and spend that time. But I mean, every single morning I go into, I have a workout room in my house, and I just lay back and I pray and I just thank God, and I'm just grateful. And I always start it, I say, Lord, thank you for everything. Thank you for this day. Thank you for my health. Thank you for Grace. She's my partner. Help me just appreciate her. Thank you for my 2 boys. Because when you're feeling stress with the company, the market, whatever, it can really start to feel like the whole world is crumbling. But then I always have to go back to my center, and I say, Lord, thank you for being my Lord and Savior. Thank you for giving me this today. Last year I tore my Achilles. You remember, right? I had to get surgery, and it really impacted my life because you can't walk for like 6 weeks, and it's a pain in the butt. And so now I'm so grateful for my health. I pray when I say, thank you for my health. I'm so grateful. Thank you for my family, because if I lost everything right now, if the company went bankrupt, I go bankrupt, everybody hates me, I can go back to my faith in God, who will get me through it, and then I have my wife and my kids, and that's all that matters. And I could always rebuild, right? So I always start off, and I'm just grateful, because that just makes it so that, okay, when I feel like I have this foundation of my faith and my family, then I'm playing with house money. I feel like I have nothing to lose. The rest of it just all becomes not that important. And then that allows you, whether you're like a high performance employee or executive or a business owner, that allows you to feel free. Okay, so I first start out with gratitude, and then I go into the next part of my prayer, and I say, Lord, please, I just surrender to you. I surrender to you. Just take the burden off of me, remove the stress, the anxiety, the fear, and the doubt from me, and fill me with peace, calm, relaxation, strength. Help me be a leader. And I'll pray, like, we've been trying to do a refinance for like the last 6 to 7 months, and it's just up and down. And I kept praying, Lord, help us get the refinance done. And recently, the last few weeks, I've said, Lord, it's in your hands, and whatever's supposed to happen, I trust that you'll do whatever's best. Just take the burden off of me. That's what I've been praying, because I can't control it. And so you just feel the weight lifted. You know what I mean? So I can just focus on what I can control, right? The things that I can't control are going to fall into place. Yeah. But as long as you have that gratitude and I surrender to Lord, then he's ultimately in control. And then I don't feel all this pressure, which honestly allows me to perform at a higher level and impact other people.
I'm sure people listening to this probably feel like, oh man, I should try that more.
Yeah.
Just committing something to the Lord, like a prayer, like a phone call with a potential investor, trying to refinance a deal, whatever that thing is, entrusting to it. I read this devotion once, and it talked about these people walking in line, and it kind of showed the burden of whatever they're carrying as this big black sack they throw over their shoulder. And so often, I think as faith-driven leaders, we pick up that sack and then we put it back down, and we maybe, God, can you help me with this situation, or this is hard, or something's going on with my health. But then our temptation is we have to own it and control it, so we pick it back up again.
Right.
And what would you say to that leader who picks it back up again instead of really just leaving it there?
Yeah, it's tough. I think we all feel that obligation, right? Especially when you're a leader. If you start really thinking about it, there's a lot of people counting on you, right? And I mean, I've had to feel a lot of pressure over the years, whether you're doing presentations, live speaking, you're, leading a company of 300 plus people, and you can't let that pressure build up in your mind because you start to just get tight, and you're like, oh, if I mess this up, all this stuff will happen. And you can't think that way. That's why it's so important for me. And again, I started doing this when I was starting to start the company, because in the beginning, I was putting all this pressure on myself, and I was so disappointed in myself. I'm like, 3 months have passed, I have no results. 6 months have passed, I'm a loser, what am I doing? And I was putting pressure on myself, which was impacting my mindset. And once I just said, you know what, I surrender to you, I mean, just take it off of me. The burden is yours, Lord, it's yours. You just feel so relieved. Because then it's like, whatever happens, happens, and I don't care about the money, I'm just gonna give it my best shot. And I will say too that I'm not like the ideal Christian. Like, I'm very rough around the edges. You know what I mean? I have like a warrior mindset. Like, I don't think I could be a pastor or a preacher. And I'm not really the kind of guy that's doing a good job spreading the gospel. Like, my relationship with God is more me talking to God, and I don't even feel comfortable trying to spread it like I should be to a lot of people. But I do pray every morning. I say, Lord, use me as a vehicle for inspiration and good to do your work. Because just use me for whatever you think I need to do. And I do have this weird thing for years where I feel like I am destined for a big purpose. And I look at it as I do think I am like God's warrior. I think that He is hardening me and has made me go through certain experiences, and I'll continue to go through these experiences to overcome significant adversity for His purpose somehow. And it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's I think that there's only certain people that can take on a lot of adversity and pressure and stress, and that might not be the picture perfect type of Christian who's like a saint. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's okay, I'm going to mold you into a warrior, and you're going to go complete this task for my good. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, I just ask Him to use me for whatever I'm supposed to do, and take that burden, and that just relieves pressure from me, right? Because then I feel like whatever's going to happen, He's in control. I'm not in control. So why would I put the pressure on myself to try to determine an outcome? I'll just give it my best shot, and whatever happens, happens. And at the end of the day, if I fail, I have my family, I have my faith, I can always rebuild. And you don't really fail unless you just completely give up. So all that stuff is very important.
So a couple of follow-up questions there. That's so good to hear, because I think that when people hear that, they probably feel a sense of, I don't have to bear every burden. I can give it my best shot and just be okay with whatever happens. And that's helpful to know. I think one of your coworkers, Jason, his kids asked you some questions.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
That was a great little episode.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think my favorite one was, I think one of the kids asked, would you rather close another big deal or coach your kids' team? And how did you answer?
Yeah, I said we've closed big deals, and it doesn't make you feel any different. I want to coach the team to the championship because there is an excitement there. You feel like a kid yourself. I think I gave the example. We had we've done a company kickball tournament the last couple of years, and I cannot help it. When we go out in the field, I'm like a little kid, and I have these competitive juices, and I want to win. And it's the fun part of rallying the team. Like last year, we did like 7 straight games, like in 100-degree weather. And it was like 4 hours straight. And like my whole team was like dead, like ready to just collapse. And we had to keep playing. I was like, okay, guys, let's go. And it was just rallying the troops. And we ended up winning. And we had like a bunch of injuries. Like one guy blew out his knee. Another guy like got a concussion. Don't ask me how. It was an intense kickball. But we won it. And it was like when we won, that was so exciting, and the satisfaction of overcoming adversity together with other people. There's something special to that, which you can't replace with money or anything like that, because it's not the same feeling. Hey everyone, just a quick word before we jump back into this episode. I'm Zach, the CEO of Rise48 Equity, and I want to take a moment to share a little bit about what we do and why we do it, because I think it's going to resonate with a lot of you who are listening to this series. At Rise48, we're a real estate investment company, but the way that we think about our work goes beyond just improving properties and generating returns. We genuinely believe that when you invest in a community, you have a responsibility to invest in the people who live there too. That looks like hiring community managers who are present and engaged with residents. It looks like hosting monthly events for our residents to build an actual community. It looks like our team showing up together to volunteer and partner with nonprofits in the areas where we operate. For those of us who are faith-driven, I think there's also a deeper question underneath every investment decision, and it's not just what's the return. It's what is my capital actually building? Those two things should and can coexist together. At Rise48, we built a model where strong returns and strong communities go hand in hand. If that's the kind of investment that you've been looking for, we'd love to connect with you and tell you about what we're building. You can learn more at rise48equity.com, and we'll get you right back to the episode.
So Rise48 has recently kind of gone through a rebrand in terms of our company values. Could you kind of walk us through what those are, and how does your faith or your character feed into those values?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and so again, these values are not for everybody. Some people might think that they're cheesy. Some people might think that they're inappropriate or unprofessional. But last year we created a leadership team, which is like 6 or 7 of us, the executive leadership team of the company, who have all been here for several years. And we said, okay, what are the core values of our company? And by the way, we've been around for like, 7 or 8 years, and we just did core values last year, because in the past, Nick, I always thought that core values were stupid. I thought they were cheesy, and they were like corporate stereotypes, and I was like, we're not gonna have that. But then as we've grown, I started realizing, okay, we're in 3 different states across the country, over 300 people. I personally can't influence all these people, and all our middle managers need to understand what is gonna be trickling down as far as the philosophy of the company. So we wrote down, like, okay, who are like the top performers and the people that we really think embody the culture and the soul of the company? Then what are the characteristics of those people that we really like, right? And this kind of gets back to like this warrior mindset where we want to be tough, we want to give it everything we got. We might be rough around the edges, we're not perfect, but we want to be like a championship team. And so the first core value is team before me, right? Which basically means that we don't want selfish people, right? We want to feel like we're like a team sport almost, right? And you're going to sacrifice for your teammate for the greater good of the company, right? So if you're in a certain department and the department's goal, if the accounting department's goal is to get these financials done by this deadline, and you have to do extra work to pick up the slack for your teammate, that's what you do. And for the people who are selfish and they're creating issues, we need to get those people out. Because the first few years, what happened, Nick, is like the market was good, we're growing, we're making lots of money, we're hiring lots of people, and I wanted to have this great culture, right? It was like, oh, culture. Okay, let's give out a lot of money, let's give out prizes, let's just all be happy. And I felt like I had to almost be politically correct, and I almost had to like appease employees. And what I realized is that as you get bigger and bigger and you keep growing, then the standard and expectation starts to deteriorate, right? Where you've got middle managers who are not holding people accountable, and we just want to make people happy. We're hiring people without really trying to vet, do they fit? And that was another part of why we need to create core values. Like, well, what are we about? Because it's not only about what do we want to do, it's to basically determine who do we not want in this company? Like, who are we not going to hire, and who's in the company now that doesn't meet these? We need to get them out. So last year, about 18 months ago, in our all staff meetings, I just started saying, like, these are our core values, and if you don't meet them, that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you're not for us. And I don't care if that doesn't sound nice. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want you here if you're not going to exhibit these these values. So one of them is a team for me. We don't want selfish people. We want true, selfless team people, right? So because if everybody is coming together with that mindset, we can win as a team. The next one is, the second one is hungry for growth. We want ambitious people who are hungry killers who want to grow personally and professionally. If you want to just be a 9 to 5 person and you're complacent, that's great. Like, I'm actually jealous of those people because maybe they're happy. You know what I mean? I'm not happy with that. Like, I want to always strive for more. And we want people that are like that, where iron sharpens iron, right? So that we can, just like, again, I always give these sports analogies, but I think of myself as like an NFL roster and I'm the general manager. And every season, you know, we're recording this right now and training camp has just started. I told our team this a couple of days ago, our leadership team. I said, guys, training camp just started and every single person on the roster has to earn their job. Nobody's protected. Nobody's safe, right? Because if everybody is competing to be their best, then you're going to get the best out of everyone, right? And the underperformers, they're going to get cut from the team. So that's the second one, is hungry for growth. The third one is relentless attack mode, right? And this sounds cheesy, right? Some people might laugh, but like relentless attack mode means that you are just going to keep attacking and keep pursuing your goals no matter what, despite any adversity, criticism, haters. If you fail, you attack again, you keep going, right? In our all-staff meetings, I'll give quotes of like Kobe Bryant, you know, where he just keeps shooting. Because if you had a bad day, if you have a bad game, you just keep going and attacking. Because I'm a firm believer that you only fail if you actually quit, right? So if you feel like you've failed or you haven't done something, well, pick yourself up and keep attacking. Because the best defense is a good offense, right? I've always said that. Just keep attacking. So relentless attack mode. Fourth one is not afraid to fail. We want people who are not afraid to fail. And this is human nature. We're all innately afraid to fail, me included. And this is why I made it a core value. I have to remind myself this every week. And I want to remind our team is like, hey, if you are not feeling fear and feeling discomfort and anxiety, it means you're not pushing yourself and challenging yourself. And so many humans, all of us, we do not fulfill our true potential because we're afraid of failing, because of the result, or what people will think, that will look bad, that, you know, whatever. But if we don't take those shots and those risks, we're not going to advance. And so I tell the staff and the team, hey, I would rather you ask for forgiveness than for permission, because at least you're taking a risk, you're innovating, right? And it's all within bounds, right? Not, people can't take advantage of it, but it's like, if you're in accounting and we have a stupid process, then propose a new process and don't be afraid what your boss says, right? And tell people that. You know, if we're in marketing and you want to innovate something, then you should try that, right? So I want people to be pushing themselves to get new results. So that's a big one. And then the last one is results over politics. You know, we say that we operate in a meritocracy based on merit. Like, what are you actually doing? You know, I don't care if you've been here longer, if you're friends with the supervisor or whatever. We don't want any of those BS politics. We don't want bureaucracy. If you've been here for 3 months and you're killing it and you're getting results, we will promote you and give you a raise, because it's all about results, right? So it's like, take all the emotion out of it and try to just be focused on how do you help the team win, because that's the fairest economy you can have, in my opinion, right? Is the results-oriented thing. And so those are the 5 core values. And so like when we're trying to hire people, we're trying to determine, do we think they might meet these? If we're evaluating current staff, and again, nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to emulate everyone perfectly, but in general, do they meet these type of values?
Yeah, I think that's what really drew me to want to be a part of what Rise is doing, is the values that you're talking about now that maybe weren't formulated, but you catch it from the people that are around you. Yeah. So let's fast forward. Okay, we got over 300 employees now. Yeah. What would you want to be true of your employees, let's say 15, 20 years from now?
I would want them to look back and feel like that they really enjoyed being a part of the team, not just because of money, but because they grew personally, because they created relationships that meant something more. Because I've been a part of companies as an employee where I made a lot of money and I don't like the people I work with. You know what I mean? And that's no fun. And so I want people to make money. I want them to advance in their careers and achieve financial freedom and all their personal goals. But I also want them to be part of a group that they're like, wow, you know, you can't really replicate that again. Like, there was something special about that. We always everybody throws around the word culture. You know, it's kind of like a cliche buzzword, but you know, the culture is really like, what is the makeup of the people that you have and how do they work together? And so I think that if they just remember that we went through a bunch of adversity together and we stuck together and overcame it, then that's like the most fulfilling thing looking back. Like I tell our team all the time, I'm like some of our leadership team gets stressed out because we're in a tough environment right now. And I tell them, guys, think about a trust fund baby. Like, let's just pretend you were born and you're super wealthy and you have no challenges or worries. Those people are miserable. They end up like doing substance abuse, all types of problems because they have no purpose. And I tell them that like suffering is beautiful. Like it really is, because like by going through adversity, you're living life. Like you're overcoming things and challenging yourself. I say, we're gonna get on the other side of this and be really successful. And I'm gonna probably be miserable because the journey really is the fun part. And I'm gonna look back and be like, man, we were like up against it and we stuck together and we overcame the odds. And that is like the most fulfilling, beautiful thing, that you did it together. You know what I mean? That's the cool part.
Yeah, there's something powerful about going through challenges. They shape who you become. And we've gone through some challenges. And you've
100%.
had some people throw you under the mud a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And say some things, falsely and be accused, misaligned. How did you deal with that?
Yeah.
Both, physically, emotionally, spiritually during that season?
Yes.
And maybe walk us through whatever you want to share about it.
Yeah. So when you're not used to, you're not used to like public criticism, it really hits you hard. Okay. So I think the beginning of it was in like the summer of 2023, and there's like a tabloid, like a real estate tabloid, and they reached out, saying, hey, we're going to do this article on you, how you guys are how distressed, you're falling apart, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, that's not true. And I gave them all this information, and the next day they basically ignored everything I gave them, and they published like a BS article that put us into a group with other groups that are actually getting foreclosed on and all this stuff, right? And so in this day and age with the internet, social media, in the history of mankind, when you start to achieve things and you start to get attention, you are going to gain haters, critics, right? It doesn't matter if it was 300 years ago till now, right? But in this internet, social media driven, environment that we live in, it can be amplified, right? So then you start getting trolls, creating anonymous accounts, accusing us of committing Ponzi schemes and fraud and all this crazy stuff that there's never been any proof of. We've never been in trouble with anything. And so when it first happened, I was pissed that they put out this article, and I was like, I feel so helpless because they have this platform that they just put it out. I need to get my story out. So I like recorded a video and I blasted it on LinkedIn. It got like hundreds of thousands of views, and it created like a huge uproar, right? And it was extremely stressful because I was like, oh, what did I do? Like, should I have done that? But I felt like I needed to get my side of the story out. I'm getting hundreds of emails from investors, all this stuff. So you start to feel, and again, I'm not like, nearly in the public spotlight as a lot of people in this world. So this is a very small example. But when you start to feel that, there's pressure and it changes your mindset. So you have to be able, and that's when you have to go lean back on your faith. And you have to realize that, okay, why do I even care what these people think? You know what I mean? Like anybody can judge me, but what really matters is what God thinks. And if I'm being true to Him, and He's my foundation, then I had to start telling myself, I fear no man. I fear no man. So it's like, if you want to talk crap, go ahead. We'll come after you. So you get used to it, over time, and it makes you stronger. You can either put your head in the sand, or you can attack it and keep going. And so at a certain point, it actually emboldens you, and you use it as fuel. You know what I mean? And now I tell myself thanks for the fuel, because I was getting kind of lazy. I was getting complacent. And so you get into like a rhythm where, it's never a fun thing, but it can just motivate you to go to that next level.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about this before with Grace. She's been part of the journey from the earliest time. Still involved in different ways in the company today. But what has building together been like, and how has that helped your marriage? And even some of your partners, their spouses are involved. So what's that been like doing it together with your spouse?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny because I talk to other people, like other friends who may have worked with their spouse or started a company, and they're like, oh man, it's so tough working with my spouse. But the funny thing is, and they get in fights and all this stuff, the funny thing is when I met Grace was like right when I quit my job to start the company. So all we knew was like starting this together. Like, so our relationship, was kind of grounded in starting this company, and that was part of the magic of it, I think, is that we were, going through, and I was dead broke. Like when I quit my job and I burned through savings, it got to the point where she was working a full-time job and I was an entrepreneur making no money. And I felt like a loser. And she was paying all the bills. And so like I would basically kept track of everything she paid for. And when we started making money, because this is before we got married, I paid off her car and I basically reimbursed her for everything because she was paying the rent, all this stuff. And so that actually brought us closer together. And then again, I think that was God working in our lives because she's the one that brought me back to church and really helped me just focus on my relationship. And I also had like, in the past, I would go to certain churches and I didn't like the message, or I felt like I didn't like how they were interpreting things. And so after I met her, I started realizing I can just have my own relationship with God. And I know, what Jesus is about, what his sacrifice was. And I don't really need to focus on other people's interpretation. It's good to know the Word of God. But that was important, having that one-on-one relationship. Because I think the problem with a lot of non-believers is that they have all these people that are trying to impose things on them, and that puts their guard up, right? And I think there needs to be a way where people can understand the story of Jesus, why he did it. Like watching like the Passion of the Christ, like that movie is always so powerful to watch that because you realize, wow, he made this sacrifice. And I don't know. I mean, I think that it's just. I mean, Grace has been integral. I mean, she basically led all of our marketing initially. So like, I hate social media. I'm naturally an introvert, and I didn't even have an Instagram. I never have. But she realized from the very beginning the importance of getting exposure and awareness on social media. And so she did all that stuff the first few years. Like she ran all my accounts. Then she started hiring a marketing team, trained them. And then 2-3 years ago, when we got pregnant with our first child, she basically kind of got out of the company so she can just focus on being a mom. But she laid the whole foundation, the groundwork for everything we do today from a marketing perspective, right? And so that's kind of the cool thing is that, ever since we've been together, we've been entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of what we know.
It's amazing. Okay, so you've accumulated a lot of units, 12,000? Is that what we're at now? Recognition, scale. What would make all of this feel worth it for you? What would make it feel wasted? Walk us through that.
I guess I would start with wasted because I think about this all the time. Like, it would feel wasted if I gave up. Like if I decided to just like give in to the pressure or go do something else, right? Like we bought like a bunch of deals in 21, 22, right before interest rates skyrocketed, and those have been challenging deals. I mean, to this date, we still have never lost investor capital, never missed a monthly debt payment, but it's been a grind the last 4 years, right? And you see a lot of your competitors just close up shop and go do something else or put their head in the sand. And sometimes you see that and you're like, you try to put yourself in their shoes because they're running from the stress. They're running from the spotlight because maybe it's too much for them. And I just always try to empathize or put myself in people's shoes. And I've done that before. I'm like, what if I just, like, man, this is tough. This season of life is tough in this industry. What if I did something else? And I've tried to envision it where like, okay, I go start this other company, I make a ton of money, and I try to think about it. I would feel like so guilty and so much regret because I didn't see it through and keep grinding. You know what I mean? And so like, it doesn't even cross my mind. It's basically fight to the death. We will be successful. And I've been studying a lot of other successful entrepreneurs by reading biographies the last couple of years. And it's like every single successful entrepreneur has gone through hell and back and almost been bankrupt over and over. And it's because they got through it and didn't quit that they become massive. And then people think they're like an overnight success, right? So I've learned to transform my perspective that the suffering and the adversity is the beauty. It sounds like the cliche of like the journey, is the whatever, the beauty's in the journey. But it's true because it's like that's what's making you stronger, and it's those daily challenges. I'm to the point now where if I have a day on my calendar where I like don't have something stressful or challenging, I start to get like bored. I'm like, I can't even go on a vacation because I'm like, what's the point of this? Like we need to be doing something and attacking something. So I mean, that's what would be a failure, and then as a success. As long as I know that I gave it everything I had and I didn't let other people down, the result does not matter. Okay, the result doesn't matter because you've done everything you can. If you've controlled what you can control, and you know in your heart you gave it everything you had, then the result is the result. You know, and you can only control what you can control, right? And that's what I've told our team is like, guys, we always will fight to the death, and whatever happens, happens. And that's why we've gotten through everything, and things are really looking up now going forward.
What would you say to the leader who's successful, exhausted, quietly unfulfilled, maybe exactly where you were before you started Rise? What would you say to that person? Give them some encouragement, some nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, you're saying they're successful, quiet, and unfulfilled?
Yeah.
I think that if they're unfulfilled, it's because they are not challenging themselves to the true potential. Because I think that you could have all the money in the world, but if you don't feel challenged or stimulated, it does not matter, right? Because you just feel like you're wasting your time, right? Like, I can tell you that when 2022, we were making a ton of money, like more money than I had ever made in my life. And I was like early 30s. You know, you become a multimillionaire. And I didn't feel fulfilled because I was like, okay, I'm making all this money and I thought it would be different. Like, what do I do with the money? You know what I mean? Like, you know, do I buy stuff? Like, does this define me? And it's like, I'm making all this money. People don't know I'm making the money. Do I need to try to like let them know I'm making money?
Go get a Rolex or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, wow, it's like all the stuff people say is true. It's like, it doesn't really change things. And it's like the last few years, I'm actually like more proud of what we've done as a team because of how we've reacted to adversity and stuck together. You know what I mean? Because it's harder. You know what I mean? It's like, so whenever I see somebody talking crap from the sidelines, I just kind of laugh to myself. It's like, you're not even in the arena. You have no idea. And so I don't even care what you say. Like, come out into the arena and go through the fire. Because anybody can do it when it's easy, you know?
That's really good. Okay, last question. What's God teaching you right now that you haven't mastered yet?
I think he's just teaching me patience, honestly. Patience and resilience, because this refinance is a perfect example. Like, we were supposed to close this massive refi, which would have given us a lot of relief at the end of March. And the forecast was that if we didn't close it, we'd have all these troubles. Well, we haven't closed it, and we have, and all these other doors have opened up, and we find a way. You know what I mean? And so it's like, this was about 6 to 8 weeks ago. I signed a stack of signature pages like this big, like 150 signature pages to close a massive multi-$100 million refinance, which was supposed to be like our saving grace. It was done. Loan docs were done. It was going to close on a Thursday. On a Monday morning, I signed all the docs. It literally took me like 30, 40 minutes just to sign all these docs nonstop. And I'm like signing, I'm like, man, this is awesome. We're going to get this done. And then that afternoon, the lender calls and they say, hey, we're not doing the loan. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? They're like, oh, we're not doing it. Didn't get an explanation. They just can't do it. We still haven't gotten an explanation. And that, like, while I was on the phone call, it was like hitting me. I was like, this is not good. But what I've realized the last several weeks is like, that happened for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, God stopped it for a reason. And we actually just got another term sheet from a different lender for a better, bigger refinance that's more favorable, which I think will close in the next couple of months. And so sometimes you have to remind yourself, you're like, man, I really worked hard for this. Why didn't this happen? And you feel like, am I being punished? Did I do something wrong? Or this person wronged me? And you just got to remember that God has a purpose. And even if you don't believe in God, some people might say everything happens for a reason, right? And so you got to trust in that maybe something that looked bad prevented you from doing something that could have been even worse. Like last year I tore my Achilles, and it was like, you know, at that time, it was a stressful time. You know, we were doing capital calls on deals, and I was doing all these live webinars where I already had all this anxiety. And my release was I would work out in the morning really hard. So I release the endorphins, I come into work feeling calm, I can do the webinar. Well, when I tear the Achilles, you can't work out. And you're in a ton of pain. So I'm like literally in the office, feeling grouchy. I got my leg propped up on a chair in the office, and then I'm doing a live webinar. None of them can see like a freaking cast. And I'm like, this sucks. Why do I have to tear my Achilles when I'm going through all this crap? But I thought about it, I was like, my wife even told me, she's like, maybe you getting injured stopped you from doing something else you would have done that could have been detrimental to you. You never know. You know what I mean? But like through that adversity, I learned a lot about myself. I became stronger mentally, physically. And I was like, God made me do it. Like in the summer, I couldn't walk. I was just like literally crawling around my workout room, working out, like lifting weights, and it's like 115 degrees in the summer. I couldn't go anywhere. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool because it's like, I feel like I'm in jail right now, but all I have is my thoughts and just kind of reflect on everything. And so it made me stronger, frankly, like mentally, emotionally, and then physically. I don't take for granted the ability to work out anymore because I had it taken away. And so now I like don't miss a workout because it's like, I'm healthy, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna work out. And so anyways, like that's what I think is important, is just to remember that there's over 8 billion humans. Sometimes when I'm feeling stressed too, Nick, what I do, this is like, some people call it like a form of meditation. I'll lay down and I pray, and then I'm just quiet and I'm thinking, and I try to imagine this is like a form of meditation, try to imagine myself outside of my body, right? Like looking down at my body. So you first imagine that you're like floating at the ceiling looking down, then you keep going higher and higher. You see your neighborhood, the city. And when I think I have problems, I'm thinking there's 8 billion people in this world. I'm like a little ant. God's in control. My problems don't really matter. So like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. Let me just give it a shot, and whatever the result is, let it be, because God's in control. And if you believe Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, you're going to die, go to heaven, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. So if you're talking to someone listening to this, and they're maybe not walking by faith, or they're not a Christian, or they're not a faith-driven person, what would you say to them, just as a word of encouragement, if they wanted to take a step towards maybe, everything Zach's saying, I want that peace. I want to be able to zoom out and look at the little ant and not feel worried. Yeah. I want to be able to drop off those burdens and not pick them back up again.
Yeah, I mean, what I find is it's either people just weren't raised with like the education of the story of Jesus and his story. So I would say like, you don't have to become a believer right away. Just maybe like listen to a podcast on the story or something. Like if you don't feel comfortable going to church right away, like I would say find out, just get educated. Like, I don't know if you want to say, it's my business partner, Bikram. He was not raised Christian, but like the last couple years, he's been like listening to the Bible through a series of podcasts. And he's like talking to me, he's like saying it all kind of makes sense. I don't even know if he'll openly admit it, but I feel like he's like a believer now because he's like, just was never really exposed to it. You know what I mean? So I would say it's either that, or maybe what you see all the time, this, Nick, is that people are raised in a very strict religious environment. Yeah. And they're almost like rebelling, or they've had too much of it as a kid, and so they're denying God. And I think that's kind of where I'm getting to, where it's like your relationship with God is your relationship with God. Like you don't need to listen to other people's interpretations because you and God know what that relationship is like. And if you think that if you're unfulfilled, then you might be chasing the wrong things. Yeah. You might be chasing things that don't matter. And it's totally fine to have money. For me, money is just like a scoreboard. It's like a competitive, check mark. But that can't be what you're based in. Yeah. Because when you lose it, it'll destroy you. And when you make it, you're not going to be happy. So,
I think stories are powerful. I think the movie, The Passion, is amazing. Listening to something like a podcast, in college, a friend shared this story to me, and he asked me this really powerful question. Nick, if you were to die and God were to say, why should I let you into heaven? What would you say? And
that's a good question.
I rattled off, I go to church, and if there's an old lady, I'll walk her across the street. In general, I'm a pretty good person. My good account is 51%, right, a little bit more than even. Yeah. And then of course, I asked him the question, Andrew, and then he said, this is Andrew, the professional Christian doing Bible studies.
Yep.
And he said, Nick, I'd tell God I don't deserve to get in. It was one of those mic drop moments of like, what are you talking about? You're like a professional Christian.
That's deep. That's profound.
And then he said, it's only by the grace of God that you're saved. And there's something about an entrepreneur that just wants to work and make it happen. And this whole story of the Bible, of Jesus, is we had it all, we lost it all, but he loved us so much that he sent his son to ultimately die for us and to serve as a substitute and to give us kind of a clean slate in a lot of ways. And that's the grace of getting something you don't deserve is really hard, I think, for entrepreneurs, for driven guys to just feel like, you're telling me I don't have to work for it? I don't have to go out there and make it happen? It's a free gift. And I think that's the most powerful part about the story of Christ. So
no, I agree. And in building on that, I think the problem with a lot of humans is that there's the component that you just talked about, where like they don't think that it's just that simple.
Yeah.
But there's also a dynamic for people where they don't want to feel like they're not in control.
That's right.
Right? They're like, well, why would I need to bow down to this God? Like, who are you, God, to tell me that I'm flawed?
Yeah.
Right? And it comes down to the humility, right? And that's why I was saying in the beginning of our little session here is that I do this, and it's not good, but this is a lot of humans do this. It's like, it's only when you're really facing adversity do I go ask for God's help, because you instantly start to realize how you are nothing. You don't have control. You know what I mean? It's like my mother-in-law, she's like 60 years old. On Easter Day, she was at our house. Everything's fine. The next day, she goes to the hospital, and she has, colon cancer, which is very advanced. And you know what I mean? And she's like a healthy person who works out every single day. So it's like things can change like that. And I think it's having the humility of realizing everything can change. And like if you were to go back to people who were slaves or they just have a terrible life, then they're a lot more humble because they realize how hard life can be. I think in today's environment, especially in America, we all have it so good we don't even know it. So we don't need God because we have shelter and we have food and water and we have money. They go, what do I need God for? Life is good, right? But I think sometimes you need to be reminded and have that humility so that you remember that you do need God's grace. And it's just human nature to kind of forget about that.
Yeah, really powerful. Well, thanks for tuning in. For the podcast listeners, we'll have more amazing guests, and until next time.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the On the Rise podcast. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decisions, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the On the Rise podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.